The night was colder than usual, and the streets were almost empty. A teenage boy walked slowly, holding his thin jacket tight around his chest. The jacket was old, and the cold wind went straight through it. His shoes were worn out, and the laces were broken. He had not eaten a proper meal for 2 days. His stomach growled, but he kept moving, hoping he could find something to eat or at least a warm place to sit for a while. He had nowhere to go and no one waiting for him. His name was Michael. At only 15, life had already been harsh to him. His parents had separated long ago, and he had fallen through the cracks of the system. Sometimes he stayed at a friend's place, sometimes with distant relatives, but most nights he was alone. That night, the cold was unbearable. His fingers were stiff, and his lips were dry. He felt like giving up, but something inside pushed him to keep walking. As he passed by an old building, he noticed lights were still on. It was late, and most shops had closed. The place looked like a school or office, and inside he saw a man sweeping the floor. Michael stopped for a moment, watching through the glass. The man was older, wearing simple clothes and a work uniform. He looked tired, but his movements were steady and strong. Michael stood outside longer than he should have, staring at the warmth of the light inside. His breath came out in small white clouds as he thought about whether to go closer. The janitor inside noticed him. At first, he thought it was just a passerby, but when he looked again, he saw the boy standing there with empty eyes and trembling hands. The janitor walked closer to the door and opened it slightly. The warm air rushed out, and Michael could smell a faint trace of cleaning soap mixed with coffee. "Son, are you all right?" the janitor asked in a gentle voice. Michael hesitated. He wanted to say yes, but his stomach growled loudly, answering for him. His cheeks turned red with embarrassment. The janitor's eyes softened as he studied the boy. He had seen hardship before. He had lived through his own share of struggles, so he recognized the signs. The boy was hungry, tired, and lost. "Come inside for a while," the janitor said kindly. "It's too cold out there." Michael looked unsure, as if he didn't trust people easily. But the man's voice carried warmth, not pity. Slowly, he stepped inside. The heat from the building hit his frozen hands, and he let out a small sigh of relief. The janitor closed the door behind him and handed him a chair. "Sit down, son. You look like you need a rest." Michael nodded quietly and sat. His body sank into the chair as though he had been standing for hours. The janitor walked away for a moment and came back with a sandwich wrapped in paper. "It's not much," he said, "but it'll fill your stomach." The boy's eyes widened. He hadn't expected food. With a shaky thank you, he took it and began eating quickly, trying not to look greedy. The janitor watched him, remembering the days when he himself had gone to bed hungry as a child. It was a memory that never left him, and it was why he never ignored anyone in need. After a few minutes, Michael slowed down, finishing the sandwich carefully. His eyes lifted toward the man. "Why are you helping me?" he asked softly. The janitor smiled. "Because once, someone helped me too. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life." Michael didn't know how to respond. He had spent so many nights feeling invisible, as if nobody cared whether he lived or not. Yet here was a man, a stranger, treating him with respect and kindness. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The janitor introduced himself as Mr. Lewis. He explained that he worked nights cleaning the building. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it paid enough to keep food on the table. He told Michael a little about his own struggles, how he had grown up poor in a neighborhood where opportunities were few. He spoke about how he had learned to survive by working hard and keeping faith that life could get better. Michael listened quietly, his eyes fixed on the man. For the first time in years, he felt like someone understood him. There was no judgment in Mr. Lewis's voice, no harsh words, only gentle encouragement. "You don't have to go through this alone," Mr. Lewis said. "Sometimes, life feels colder than the night outside, but there are always people willing to help. You just have to let them." The boy's eyes watered slightly, though he tried to hide it. He wasn't used to kindness. He had built walls around himself to keep out pain, but those walls started to crack that night. Mr. Lewis offered him a blanket he kept in the storage room. "You can rest here for a while. It's safer than the street." Michael hesitated again, but the exhaustion in his body was too heavy. He lay down on a small couch in the corner, covering himself with the blanket. The warmth wrapped around him, and within minutes his eyes closed. For the first time in weeks, he felt safe enough to sleep. As he drifted off, Mr. Lewis looked at him with quiet concern. He didn't know who the boy was or where he came from, but he knew this moment mattered. Sometimes, a single act of kindness could shift the course of a life. He prayed silently that this boy would find strength and a brighter future. That night became a turning point. To Michael, it was more than food or shelter, it was proof that kindness still existed in the world. He would carry the memory of that night for the rest of his life. Long after the cold the next morning, Michael woke up to the sound of footsteps and the faint smell of coffee. For a moment, he forgot where he was. He rubbed his eyes and saw Mr. Lewis sweeping the floor again, humming softly as he worked. The blanket still covered him, warm and comforting. It was the first time in a long while that Michael had slept through the night without fear of being woken by cold, hunger, or strangers. He sat up slowly, unsure if he should speak. Mr. Lewis noticed and gave him a small smile. "Morning, son. Did you sleep well?" Michael nodded. "Yes, thank you." His voice was quiet but honest. "I'm glad," Mr. Lewis said, leaning his broom against the wall. He walked over with a paper cup of warm coffee. "It's not fancy, but it'll help you wake up." Michael took it carefully, holding the cup in both hands to soak in the warmth. The steam rose into his face, and he breathed it in like it was the richest smell in the world. He hadn't realized how much he missed the feeling of something warm filling his chest. They sat quietly for a while. Michael wasn't used to talking about himself, and Mr. Lewis didn't want to push him. Instead, he spoke gently about small things, the weather, his long shifts, and how he had started working as a janitor years ago. Slowly, Michael began to relax. He felt less like a stranger and more like someone being welcomed. After finishing the coffee, Michael stood up, unsure of what to do next. "I should probably go," he muttered. "Go where?" Mr. Lewis asked softly. Michael lowered his eyes. "I don't know. Just, somewhere." There was silence for a moment. Mr. Lewis studied the boy, then said, "Son, you remind me of myself when I was young. Lost, searching for something better. I had people who showed me kindness, and it kept me moving forward. Let me do the same for you." Michael looked at him with wide eyes. "Why? You don't even know me." Mr. Lewis smiled gently. "I don't need to know everything about you. What I see is enough. I see a young man with potential. You just need someone to believe in you." The words struck Michael deeply. No one had ever spoken to him like that. He had been called many things: trouble, burden, runaway, but never had anyone said he had potential. It was like a small spark lit inside his heart. From that day forward, Michael visited the building often. He didn't have much else, but he knew Mr. Lewis's kindness was waiting for him. The janitor never treated him like a burden. Instead, he gave him small tasks to do, letting him feel useful. Sometimes, Michael would help mop the floor or carry supplies. In return, Mr. Lewis would share food, simple meals like sandwiches or soup. One evening, while they sat eating together, Mr. Lewis asked, Do you go to school, son? Michael hesitated. I used to, but I stopped going. Why? Michael stared at his hands. Too many things. I was always moving around. I got behind, and then it just felt pointless. Mr. Lewis shook his head gently. Education isn't pointless. It's one of the few tools no one can take away from you. You're smart, Michael. I can see it. You should go back. Michael shrugged. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't know where to start. Mr. Lewis leaned forward. One step at a time. That's how everything starts. I'll help you if you let me. For the first time, Michael felt like maybe he wasn't completely alone. Maybe there was still a chance for him to rebuild. Weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. Mr. Lewis became more than a kind stranger, he became a guide, almost like a father figure. He didn't have much money or luxury, but he gave Michael something more valuable, wisdom and belief. He taught Michael lessons that weren't written in books. Respect yourself, even when others don't, he would say. Work hard, even when no one is watching. And remember, kindness is strength, not weakness. Michael absorbed these words like water in dry soil. He carried them in his heart, repeating them silently when days felt heavy. Sometimes, Michael struggled with anger and frustration. He couldn't understand why his life had been so hard. But whenever he felt lost, Mr. Lewis reminded him to focus on what he could control. Life will test you, he explained, but you decide how you respond. Don't let hardship define you. Let it shape you into someone stronger. One night, as they cleaned the building together, Michael finally asked, "Did you ever want to be more than a janitor?" Mr. Lewis paused, leaning on his broom. Of course. When I was young, I dreamed big. But life had other plans. I took this job because it was honest work, and it allowed me to survive. I won't lie, sometimes I wondered what could have been. But you know what? I realized something important. Greatness isn't always about titles or money. Sometimes greatness is simply doing the best with what you have and helping someone else along the way. Michael listened closely. He thought about those words long after. Maybe he still had a chance to dream, even if the road was hard. Over time, Mr. Lewis encouraged Michael to return to school. He helped him talk to administrators and filled out forms. It wasn't easy, and Michael often felt embarrassed by how far behind he was, but Mr. Lewis kept reminding him, every step forward is victory. Michael began attending classes again. At first, it was tough. He was older than some classmates and carried the weight of his past. But whenever he felt like giving up, he thought of the janitor who had given him food on a cold night and believed in him when no one else did. That thought pushed him to keep going. Mr. Lewis continued working his night shifts, but he always made time for Michael. He checked on his progress, listened to his worries, and celebrated his small successes. To him, the boy wasn't just another struggling teen, he was proof that kindness could change a future. For Michael, those months became the foundation of everything that would come later. He had found someone who cared, someone who saw him not as a problem but as a person with worth. That belief became his strength. He began to dream again. He dreamed of finishing school, of one day giving back to others the way Mr. Lewis gave to him. He didn't know how or when, but he promised himself that he would never forget the lesson of that cold night. One act of kindness can change a life forever. And deep in his heart, he promised himself something else too, that if he ever had the power to help others, he would never turn away. As the months turned into years, Michael's life slowly began to change. He was no longer the hungry, shivering boy who had wandered the streets that cold night. With Mr. Lewis by his side, he had managed to return to school. The road was not easy. Many days, he felt like giving up. He struggled with assignments, felt out of place among his classmates, and carried the weight of a past that still haunted him. But whenever he thought of quitting, he remembered the janitor's words, "Every step forward is victory." Those words became his shield. They gave him strength when everything felt too heavy. Step by step, Michael caught up in his studies. He stayed late at the library, asked questions even when he felt shy, and kept pushing himself. His teachers noticed his effort, and some began to encourage him. Slowly, his grades improved. For the first time, Michael began to see himself as capable, not as a failure. After school, he often visited Mr. Lewis, who always listened to his stories. Some days Michael would arrive full of joy, waving a test paper with a high score. Other days he came frustrated, ready to throw away his books. No matter what mood he was in, Mr. Lewis always welcomed him with patience. One evening, after Michael had angrily thrown his backpack on the floor, Mr. Lewis sat him down. "Son," he said calmly, "life will not always reward you right away. Hard work takes time to show results. But you must keep moving. If you stop now, you'll never see what's waiting for you ahead." Michael sighed. "But it feels like I'll never be good enough." Mr. Lewis placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are already good enough. You just don't believe it yet. And until you do, I'll believe for you." Those words stayed with Michael forever. Over time, the boy grew into a young man. He graduated high school, something he once thought impossible. Mr. Lewis was there that day, clapping the loudest in the crowd, tears shining in his eyes. To him, watching Michael walk across that stage was proof that his act of kindness had blossomed into something beautiful. But Michael's journey was only beginning. After graduation, he decided to continue his studies. He wanted to learn more, not just for himself, but to build a future where he could help others the way he had been helped. He enrolled in college with a mix of excitement and fear. It was a bigger world, filled with new faces and challenges. Yet the lessons from Mr. Lewis guided him. Work hard. Stay humble. Be kind. College tested him in many ways. There were moments of loneliness, financial struggles, and nights when he doubted his path. But every time he thought of giving up, he remembered the janitor who had believed in him. That memory became his fuel. During these years, Michael also discovered his love for serving the community. He joined student groups, volunteered at shelters, and spoke with young people who reminded him of his younger self. He realized that many of them needed the same thing he had once needed: someone to believe in them. He began to share his story, not out of pride, but out of hope. When others heard that he had once been hungry and homeless, they were inspired by how far he had come. Slowly, Michael's voice gained power. People listened when he spoke. His honesty and humility touched hearts. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was simply sharing the truth. But that truth carried strength. Years later, after completing his studies, Michael returned to his city with a clear purpose. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to be the voice for those who felt forgotten. He remembered the nights he had walked alone, and he promised himself that he would help make sure others didn't feel the same way. He began working with community groups, helping organize programs for children and families in need. His energy was tireless. Whether it was arranging food drives, mentoring teenagers, or speaking at local events, Michael gave his all. People noticed his sincerity. He wasn't seeking fame, he was seeking change. At every step, he carried Mr. Lewis's lessons. Whenever he helped a child or offered guidance to a struggling young person, he thought of the janitor's warm smile on that winter night. He knew he was passing forward the same kindness that had once saved him. As the years passed, Michael's influence grew. People admired how he spoke for the voiceless. He didn't shy away from telling his own story, even the painful parts. He wanted others to see that their past did not have to define their future. One evening, after a long day of community work, Michael sat with Mr. Lewis at the small apartment where the old janitor now lived. They shared a simple meal, just as they had years ago. "You've come a long way, son," Mr. Lewis said with pride. "I always knew you could." Michael shook his head. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You saw something in me when no one else did." Mr. Lewis smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "All I did was open a door. You walked through it?" That conversation stayed with Michael. He realized that he wanted to keep opening doors for others. And as he grew older, his path became clearer. The boy who had once wandered the streets now dreamed of leading his city into a better future. The turning point had come quietly, shaped by years of guidance and countless lessons. He no longer saw himself as the lost boy on a cold night. He was a man with purpose, determined to give back. His voice had grown stronger, his heart fuller, and his vision clearer. But even as he stepped into leadership roles and gained respect, he never forgot his roots. He never forgot the janitor who had believed in him. That memory was like a compass, guiding every decision he made. Michael's road to change was not built overnight. It was built through small acts of courage, steady hard work, and the constant reminder that kindness could light even the darkest path. And though he didn't know it yet, this journey would one day carry him to a place he never imagined, to the doors of City Hall, where he would stand as a leader chosen by the very people who once overlooked him. Michael's work in the community slowly began to draw more attention. People admired his determination and the way he connected with others. He wasn't the kind of man who stayed behind a desk giving orders. He was out on the streets, speaking with families, shaking hands with shop owners, and listening to the struggles of the people. Wherever he went, people felt that he truly understood them. His story gave him credibility. He didn't just talk about hardship, he had lived it. One evening, during a small neighborhood gathering, a local leader pulled Michael aside. "You should think about running for office," the man said with a smile. Michael laughed nervously. "Me? Run for office? I don't think people like me belong in politics." But the leader shook his head. "That's exactly why you should. People trust you. They know your heart. You've been where they are, and you haven't forgotten them. That's what true leadership looks like." Michael thought about those words for weeks. The idea seemed impossible. He had once been a boy with no home, no food, and no hope. Now people were suggesting he could be a leader for the entire city. It felt overwhelming. But as he reflected, he realized something. Every step in his life had been about proving to himself that change was possible. Maybe this was the next step, not just for him, but for the people who needed a voice. When he shared the idea with Mr. Lewis, the old janitor listened carefully. After a long pause, he said, "Son, leadership is not about power. It's about responsibility. If your heart is in the right place, then you're already prepared for it." Michael nodded, feeling the weight of those words. He decided to try. He began with a small campaign, focusing on the issues that mattered most: education, housing, and opportunities for young people. He didn't have much money to spend on posters or advertisements, but he had something stronger: the trust of the people. He walked from neighborhood to neighborhood, shaking hands, listening to stories, and sharing his vision. He reminded people that he was one of them. He spoke about his past openly, telling them how he had once been hungry and lost, and how a simple act of kindness had given him a second chance. His honesty touched hearts. Many people believed in him, but there were also doubters. Some said he was too inexperienced. Others thought his background was too humble for such an important role. But Michael didn't let their words break him. He remembered how many times he had been told he wasn't good enough, and he remembered how he had proven them wrong each time. During one of his speeches, he said, "I am not running because I am perfect. I am running because I know what it feels like to be unheard." I want to make sure no child, no family, and no community is left without a voice." Those words spread across the city. People began to see him not just as a candidate but as hope for real change. Slowly, support grew. Volunteers joined his campaign, many of them young people who had once been helped by his programs. They believed in him because he had believed in them. The election day finally came. Michael stood nervously as the results were counted. His heart pounded as each district reported in. The numbers were close, and every vote seemed to matter. At last, the final result was announced. Michael had won. The room erupted in cheers. Tears filled his eyes as he looked around at the people who had supported him. He thought about the journey that had brought him there, the cold night on the street, the sandwich given by a kind janitor, the long hours of study, the countless moments when he almost gave up. And now, here he was, elected by the people to serve as mayor. When he gave his victory speech, he spoke from the heart. "This is not just my win," he said. "This is our win. This is proof that no matter where you start, your future can be different. And I promise to serve every person in the city with honesty, compassion, and dedication." As he stood at the podium, he spotted Mr. Lewis in the crowd. The old janitor's eyes were filled with pride. Michael nodded at him, silently thanking him for everything. Becoming mayor was not the end of the journey, it was the beginning of a new one. Michael faced challenges right away. Running a city was not easy. Problems did not disappear overnight. There were debates, disagreements, and pressure from every side. But Michael handled it with patience and humility. He never forgot that leadership was about serving, not controlling. He worked tirelessly to improve schools, create more opportunities for young people, and support families in need. He visited classrooms, spoke with teachers, and encouraged students to dream bigger. He knew from experience that one teacher, one mentor, or one kind stranger could make all the difference. He also focused on making the city safer and stronger. He believed that every person deserved to live with dignity. His policies were not just about numbers or laws, they were about people. He remembered their names, their stories, their struggles. That made him different from many leaders before him. Despite the heavy workload, Michael always made time to check in with Mr. Lewis. They shared dinners, laughed about old memories, and sometimes sat in silence, reflecting on how far life had taken them. One evening, Michael asked, "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if you hadn't helped me that night?" Mr. Lewis smiled. "I don't think about what ifs, son. I just thank God that I was in the right place at the right time. You did the rest. You became the man you were meant to be." Michael shook his head. "No, you planted the seed. I just kept watering it." Their bond remained unshakable. To Michael, no title or position could ever erase the truth that his journey began with one act of kindness from a janitor who believed in him. As the months turned into years, Michael's leadership left a lasting mark on the city. People admired him not only for the changes he made but for the way he carried himself. He never acted superior. He walked among the people as one of them. Children looked up to him, families trusted him, and even his opponents respected his honesty. And through it all, Michael carried a quiet dream in his heart to one day honor Mr. Lewis in front of the whole city. Because without him, none of this would have been possible. Years passed, and Michael's name became known far beyond his city. People admired not only his leadership but also his humility. He had proven that true leaders were those who served with compassion, not pride. Still, no matter how busy life became, he never forgot the man who had changed his destiny on that cold night. In his heart, he knew he owed everything to Mr. Lewis. One afternoon, as Michael sat in his office reviewing city plans, he found his thoughts drifting back to those early days. He remembered the taste of that simple sandwich, the warmth of the blanket, and the soft voice that told him he had potential. He thought about how those moments had shaped every step that followed. Suddenly, he realized that the city needed to hear this story not just in private conversations, but openly, so people would understand the power of kindness. He called his staff and said, "I want to organize a special event. Not for me, but for someone who gave me the chance to be here today." When the day of the event arrived, the city hall was filled with people. Citizens, community leaders, students, and families all gathered, curious about what the mayor had planned. The air buzzed with excitement, though no one knew exactly what was coming. Michael stepped onto the stage, wearing a calm but emotional expression. He looked out at the crowd and began to speak, his voice steady but full of feeling. "Many of you know my story," he began. "You know that I was once a boy with no home, no food, and no hope. But what many of you don't know is that my life changed because of one man's kindness." The crowd grew quiet, listening carefully. "On a freezing night, when I had nowhere to go, a janitor let me inside the building where he worked. He gave me food, warmth, and most importantly, he gave me belief. He told me I had potential when no one else saw it. And because of him, I found the strength to keep going. Because of him, I am standing here as your mayor today." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. People glanced at each other, touched by the honesty of his words. Michael paused, then continued. "Today, I want to honor that man. A man who never sought recognition, who worked quietly in the background, but whose kindness changed my life and, through me, changed this entire city." At that moment, two staff members helped an elderly man walk slowly onto the stage. It was Mr. Lewis. His hair was now gray, his steps slower, but his eyes still carried the same warmth as they had decades ago. The crowd rose to its feet in thunderous applause. Tears streamed down many faces as they realized the depth of the story unfolding before them. Michael walked over and embraced Mr. Lewis tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. The old janitor smiled with moist eyes. "I'm proud of you, son. I always knew you'd make it." Michael turned back to the crowd, holding Mr. Lewis's hand. "This is the man who believed in me when I was nothing. He didn't see me as a burden, he saw me as a person. And because of that, I stand before you today." His act of kindness proves something important: you don't have to be rich or powerful to change a life. All it takes is a kind heart. The applause grew louder. Some people stood on chairs just to clap harder. The moment was unforgettable. Michael presented Mr. Lewis with a framed award, declaring him an honorary citizen of the city, someone whose contribution would forever be remembered. But beyond the award, he gave him something greater: public recognition for a lifetime of quiet kindness. As they stood together on that stage, the boy who once slept on a couch under a blanket and the man who had offered it to him shared the spotlight. Their story touched every person in the room. Parents hugged their children, students wiped their tears, and community members felt inspired to do more for each other. Later that evening, after the event ended, Michael and Mr. Lewis sat together in a quiet room. The noise of the crowd had faded, but their hearts were still full. "You didn't have to do all that for me," Mr. Lewis said softly. Michael smiled. "Yes, I did. Because everything I've achieved is because of you. I could never thank you enough." The old man looked thoughtful. "All I did was show kindness. You're the one who turned it into something greater." Michael shook his head. "No, you taught me the meaning of kindness. You showed me that even in the darkest times, there is always light. You gave me the first step. Without that, I would have never walked this path." They sat in silence for a moment, the bond between them stronger than words. In the weeks that followed, the story of the mayor and the janitor spread far and wide. Newspapers wrote about it, television stations covered it, and social media shared the powerful message. People everywhere felt moved by the reminder that no act of kindness is ever too small. Teachers began telling the story in classrooms. Community groups used it as inspiration to start new programs. Even strangers began doing little acts of kindness in their daily lives, remembering how one small gesture had once changed the life of a boy who grew up to be mayor. Michael continued his work with even greater dedication, but now he felt a deeper purpose. He realized that leadership wasn't just about fixing problems, it was about inspiring others to believe in the good they could do. He wanted every person in the city to feel they could make a difference, no matter their position. For Mr. Lewis, the final years of his life were filled with pride and peace. He had lived humbly, never seeking recognition, but now he saw the ripple effect of his kindness spreading across the city. Everywhere he went, people greeted him with respect. Some even called him the man who saved the mayor. But he would always laugh and say, "No, I just helped a boy who was worth saving." And for Michael, every time he stood before his people, every time he made a decision or signed a new law, he carried that lesson with him. He never forgot where he had come from. He never forgot the man who had believed in him when the world had not. Decades after that cold night, their story became more than just a personal memory. It became a legend in the city, a story told from one generation to the next, a reminder that kindness can transform lives and build futures. Michael often ended his speeches with the same words: "If you see someone in need, don't look away. Be the hand that lifts them. Because you never know, you might just be changing the life of the next leader, the next teacher, the next healer, or even the next mayor." And every time he spoke those words, he thought of Mr. Lewis, the janitor who gave him food, warmth, and hope on the coldest night of his life.